She walked into the restaurant because she was hungry, and Adaeze Okafor did not do anything without a reason. The place had no sign worth mentioning, just a small carved wooden panel above the door with Korean characters she could not read, and beneath them, in modest Yoruba lettering, Ile Unje, House of Food. She had passed it twice already that week, slowing her car each time without fully understanding why, and on the third evening, she simply stopped pretending she wasn't curious and walked through the door. The interior surprised her. It was not trying to be Korean. It was not trying to be Nigerian. It was trying to be nothing except comfortable. Low lighting, wooden tables worn smooth by years of honest use, the smell of something braised low and long drifting from behind a curtain at the back. 4 tables occupied, quiet conversation, a ceiling fan turning slowly overhead. She stood in the doorway for 3 full seconds, which was 2 seconds longer than Adaeze Okafor usually needed to assess any room she entered. A man emerged from the back. He was in his late 50s, Korean, with the kind of stillness that does not come from meditation retreats or yoga classes, but from having survived things that would have killed quieter men. He wore a plain white apron over dark clothes. His hands, she noticed immediately, were the hands of someone who had used them for more than cooking, scarred in the particular way that told a story to anyone who knew how to read it. She knew how to read it. "Welcome," he said in English that carried its accent without apology. "Sit anywhere." She sat by the window. His name, she would learn over the following weeks, was Park Jun-seo. He had arrived in Lagos 14 months earlier, having spent 30 years running the West African operations of a Seoul-based criminal organization that she had known about for most of her adult life. They had never intersected directly, operating in different lanes with the careful, professional distance that serious people maintained. She had heard his name spoken once, years ago, by a man who owed her money and was trying to offer her something more valuable than cash. "Park Jun-seo doesn't lose," the man had said. "He just decides when to stop playing." She had found that interesting enough to file away, and then she had taken the money anyway. He had, apparently, decided to stop playing. The food he brought her that first night was a bowl of doenjang jjigae with a side of white rice and a small dish of kimchi that had clearly been fermenting for months, complex and deep, and nothing like the versions she had encountered in the tourist-facing Korean restaurants in Victoria Island. She ate it slowly, which was not something she normally did. Normally, Adaeze ate the way she did everything, with purpose, efficiently, moving on. That night, she sat for nearly 2 hours, and when Park Jun-seo came to collect her bowl, she looked up at him and said, "What else can you make?" He almost smiled. "Come back tomorrow?" She told herself she wouldn't. She came back the next evening. Adaeze had built her network over 15 years with the discipline of someone who understood that power, real power, is not taken. It is organized. She ran an all-female operation that moved contraband, information and money across Nigeria, Ghana, Côte d'Ivoire, Senegal, Cameroon and Benin. She had 340 women on payroll, from university-educated accountants in Abuja to market women in Cotonou who could move a package through a border post with a smile and a basket of tomatoes. She had never been arrested. She had never been photographed by anyone she hadn't authorized. She had never, in 15 years, made a decision based on emotion rather than calculation. She was proud of that last thing especially. "You run a business," her second-in-command, Ngozi, had said once, with a kind of admiring exasperation. "Other people run businesses. You run a system." "A system doesn't fail when people do," Adaeze had replied. "A business does." She meant it as a compliment to herself. She had built something that did not require her to feel anything in particular about the people inside it. She cared about them. She paid well. She protected fiercely. She had once crossed 2 international borders in 48 hours to extract a woman who had been detained by a Ghanaian official who thought female criminals were soft targets. She cared, but she had never confused caring with needing. Needing someone was a structural weakness. She had designed around it the way an engineer designs around a material's known failure point. Her mother had needed her father. Adaeze had watched what that did to a woman. She had taken detailed mental notes, at 8, at 11, at 15, while her mother waited by windows and adjusted her voice and made herself smaller and smaller until she disappeared into the space his needs required. Adaeze had looked at that and made a decision so fundamental it had never required revisiting. I will not be the one who waits. She built an architecture on that foundation. 30 years of reinforcement, tested, proven, load-bearing. Park Jun-seo cooked for her the second night like she was expected, which irritated her slightly and pleased her more than she wanted to admit. He made japchae with prawns, glass noodles with vegetables, a dish she had eaten before in lesser versions, but his was something different, lighter and more precisely seasoned than anything she remembered. He sat down across from her when the restaurant emptied, which no one did without being invited. She almost said something and then didn't. "You're not from restaurant business," she said instead. "No," he agreed. He folded his hands on the table. The scars caught the light. "Neither are you. I run an importing business," she said. "Yes." Something in the way he said it made clear that they were both aware this was true in the technical sense. She looked at him. "You know who I am. I knew before you sat down." He said it without any particular implication, not a threat, not a bid for leverage, just a fact offered flatly. "You were pointed out to me some years ago by someone who respected you very much, a man named Adaeze. Adaeze had worked for her briefly in 2018 and departed professionally when his wife's illness required him closer to home. She had paid for the treatment. She had not expected gratitude to echo this far. "Chidi spoke well of you," she said. "He said you were the most dangerous person in West Africa who had never been in a room with someone who frightened her." Park poured tea into a second cup and slid it toward her. "I found that interesting." "It is accurate," she said. "Yes," he said. "I believe it is." She drank the tea. It was barley tea, nutty and warm. She had never had it before. "Why Lagos?" she asked. He was quiet for a moment in the way of someone choosing honesty rather than diplomacy. "I spent 30 years answering to men who confused violence with authority," he said. "When I was done, really done, not the kind of done that is just tired, I wanted to go somewhere no one knew me as what I had been. Lagos is the city that does not ask where you came from. It only asks what you can do today." He paused. "Also the food markets. I had not cooked seriously since I was 23. I needed to learn again from the beginning." Adaeze looked at him for a long moment. She said, "That is either very foolish or very brave." "It is neither," he said. "It is just honest. I was very tired of performing." She left at midnight. She sat in her car for a full minute outside before starting the engine, which was something she had never done before in her life. She came back 6 times over 3 weeks, then 7. Then it stopped being remarkable that she came back and became remarkable only when she didn't. Ngozi noticed first, the way Ngozi noticed everything, with the precision of a woman who had built her career on watching Adaeze's patterns. "You're different on Wednesdays," Ngozi said one morning over logistics. "I'm not different on Wednesdays." "You're lighter, like something has been quietly removed from your shoulders." Ngozi tilted her head. "Who is he?" "There is no he," Adaeze said, and the speed with which she said it told Ngozi everything, and both women knew it. What Adaeze could not articulate, not yet, not until much later, was what specifically was happening to the architecture. It wasn't crumbling. It was something more subtle and more alarming. She was beginning to see it clearly for the first time. When you live inside a structure you built yourself, you stop being able to see its shape. You only see the interior. Park Jun-seo, by doing nothing except being exactly what he was, honest, still, unperformative, scarred in ways he no longer tried to hide, was somehow allowing her to step outside her own walls and look at them. What she saw troubled her. She had told herself for 30 years that the architecture was protection, that needing no one was strength, that designing herself around self-sufficiency was wisdom, and it was. She was not wrong about that, not entirely. But sitting across from a man who had lived a parallel life and arrived at a completely different conclusion, she could feel something shifting in the foundations that she did not have a name for yet. It came to a head on a Tuesday evening in October when a problem surfaced in Dakar. A shipment detained, a local contact compromised, a situation that required Adaeze's personal decision within the hour. She was at the restaurant when the call came. She took it at the table, spoke for 4 minutes, made 3 decisions cleanly, ended the call. Park had not moved, had not looked away, had not pretended not to hear. Dakar, he said. Yes. The port situation? She looked at him sharply. He raised both hands, palms out. Not a defensive gesture, but a clarifying one. I have no interest in your operations, he said. I am simply saying that I understand what kind of decision you just made, and the speed at which you made it. He lowered his hands. Are you all right? No one asked her that. Not after decisions, not after anything. Ngozi asked if the decision was clean. Her lawyers asked if it was defensible. Her women asked what they needed to do next. No one asked if she was all right. I'm fine, she said automatically. You don't have to be, he said. Not here. She looked at him across the table and felt something move through her chest that she recognized distantly as terror, not the practical terror of exposure or consequence. She had made peace with those long ago. Something older, something she had walled off at age 8 while watching her mother wait by a window. I don't do this, she said. Her voice was very level. Do what? This. She gestured between them, not quite able to say it. I know, he said. Neither do I. I haven't since my wife died 11 years ago. He said it plainly, not for sympathy, just as a fact he was willing to share. I'm not asking you to do anything, Adaeze. I'm not asking anything at all. I'm just telling you that this table is a place where you don't have to be the person who holds everything. She left early that night. She drove home in silence and sat in her living room in the dark for an hour, which she had not done since the night she'd made her first serious enemy, and had to decide what kind of person to become in response. She had been 29. She had made a decision and never revisited it. Now she was 44, and something she had decided at 29 no longer seemed quite as inevitable as it had. The crisis came in November. One of her senior women, Precious, 15 years with the network, Adaeze's most trusted coordinator in Accra, was approached by a rival organization and offered something: extraction, documentation, a new identity, a clean start. Precious hadn't taken it. She had come to Adaeze instead, the approach in hand, loyalty intact, but she'd said something when she told Adaeze about it that had been rattling inside Adaeze's chest for 3 days since. I would have gone, Precious had said quietly. 2 years ago, I would have gone. But I stayed because you are not just someone I work for. You are someone I love, and I didn't know if you knew that mattered. Adaeze had thanked her, had rewarded her, had spent the next 3 days unable to eat properly. She went to the restaurant on a Thursday, which was not her usual night. Park was closing up. He saw her face when she came through the door and said nothing, just turned back to the kitchen, and 10 minutes later set a bowl of kongnamul guk in front of her. Simple bean sprout soup, the kind of thing you made for someone who needed comfort more than flavor. She ate half of it and said, Do you think it is possible to love something and also use it? He sat down. He thought for a moment. Yes, he said. I think most people do. Most of the time. The question is whether you know you are doing it, and whether the other person knows they are loved, not just useful. I built a system, she said. I built it so that it didn't need me to feel anything, so I could protect people without owing them the vulnerability of caring openly. She paused. It worked. It worked very well. My women are safe, they are paid, they are loyal. But, he said, but Precious almost left, she said. Not for money, not for safety, because she did not know if I knew that she was a person and not a component. She set down her spoon. I knew. I always knew. I just never said it, because saying it meant they could see I cared, and seeing I cared meant... She stopped. Meant they could hurt you, he said. Meant I could be moved, she corrected. Meant I was movable. Meant someone had access to something real. The ceiling fan turned slowly overhead. Somewhere outside, Lagos moved through its nighttime rhythms, tireless and enormous and indifferent. I learnt this the hard way, Park said. Later than I should have. He was quiet for a moment. I told myself for many years that I was strong because I did not need anyone, that I was reliable because I could not be leveraged through affection. He turned his cup in his hands. My wife told me, before she died, that I had confused protection with absence. She said, Juncio, you think you are keeping me safe by never letting me see you frightened, but what you are doing is keeping me alone. He set the cup down. She was right. She was right, and I had 30 years with her, and I spent at least 20 of them keeping her safely at a distance and calling it strength. Adaeze looked at him for a long time. That is not strength, she said slowly. What we built, what I built. She could feel the shape of it now, standing outside the walls of it for the first time, seeing it plain. It's fear. Yes, he said gently. It's fear wearing strength's clothing, she said. I have been afraid for 30 years, and I called it architecture. He did not rush to comfort her. He did not tell her it was all right, or that she shouldn't be so hard on herself, or any of the softening things that would have made the insight smaller. He simply stayed present, across the table, and let her hold the full weight of it in her own hands. She sat with it. It was very heavy. She had been carrying it for so long that she had stopped noticing the weight, and now that she could feel it, it was extraordinary. This dense, elaborate structure she had built inside herself out of one observation at age 8. One window, one woman waiting, one decision never to be that. She had not become that. She had not waited. She had not made herself smaller. She had made herself into a room with no doors. She called Precious the next morning. She said, I need you to know that when you came to me 3 days ago and chose to stay, it was not because I am your employer that I was grateful. It was because you are one of the people in my life I love without condition. And I have done a poor job of saying that, and I am saying it now. She paused. That is all. Precious was silent for a moment. Then she said, in a voice slightly thick, Thank you, Auntie. Adaeze held her phone after the call ended. She felt something she couldn't quite name. Not soft exactly, not vulnerable exactly, but open, permeable, like a structure that had added a window and found, against all prior expectation, that the light coming in was not a weakness but a different kind of strength entirely. She did not leave the network. She did not fall dramatically into anything. That was not the kind of woman she was, and Park Jun-seo, to his credit, was not the kind of man who required drama. What happened was quieter and more complete than any story she could have told about it. She began, incrementally, to unlock rooms she had sealed. She told Ngozi she was grateful. She told her Accra team they were the reason she slept soundly. She sat with Park 3 and 4 evenings a week and ate food he made with his scarred hands and talked, sometimes about their respective histories, sometimes about nothing, sometimes about the particular difficulty of learning to want something smaller and better than what you had built. Smaller is not lesser, he said one evening, over a shared plate of pageant, the savory pancake crisp-edged and fragrant. I know, she said, and she meant it. She was beginning to know it not just intellectually but in her body, in the place where the architecture used to live. That dense, elaborate fortress she had constructed against the possibility of needing anyone. It was still there. She did not imagine it had dissolved. But there were windows in it now, and in some rooms she had left the door open. She walked into the restaurant because she was hungry. She left 2 hours later, carrying something she could not name. Months afterward, she could name it. The beginning of the end of a particular kind of loneliness. So old and so familiar, she had stopped calling it loneliness at all, had called it independence, had called it discipline, had called it strength, had decorated it with power and money and the loyalty of 340 women who needed her. She had been lonely.